Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for holding this hearing. And I want to welcome the witnesses today to share their insight on this proposed well control rule. Safety and environmental protection in energy production are important, especially in fragile ocean ecosystems, so I'm glad that there is much interest in this rule today. I think it's safe to say that the BP Deepwater Horizon explosion and oil spill was a human, economic, and ecological disaster of epic proportions. 11 members of the crew were killed in an explosion and 17 others were injured. And oil spewed into the ocean for nearly 3 months, a mile below the surface, before the magnitude of the damage became apparent. It is estimated that 171 million gallons, that is 5 million barrels of oil, escaped the uncontrolled well. So people, wildlife were exposed to oil and toxic chemical dispersants, and unfortunately, local economies and critical habitats of the Gulf were impacted. It is clear now that this disaster could have been avoided, and that multiple blue ribbon panels have concluded that the immediate cause of the blowout can be traced to a series of systematic failures in risk management and a broken safety culture. Another contributing factor, government mismanagement, has been addressed through the reorganization of the Mineral Management Services into a separate Leasing, Revenue, and Enforcement Bureau. There have been changes to the way these new regulatory bodies interact with the industry they oversee to ensure that they avoid the circumstances where we have the regulators captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. Setting aside organizational issues, the well control rule at issue today will address the other primary cause of the Deepwater Horizon disaster, inadequate risk management and safety oversight, by codifying the advances made by industry experts and regulators over the last 5 years. We've made progress since Deepwater Horizon, but, quote, loss of well control, end quote, remains an issue. In fact, since 2010, there have been a separate 23 loss of well control incidents. The administration estimates that we experience between 6 and 8 of these incidents a year. So we can't afford these kinds of risks. The residents, the environment, the coastal economies, the taxpayers, not even the oil and gas industry can afford the repeat of the Deepwater Horizon. So although none of the events have been as significant as Deepwater Horizon, the fact that these keep happening only emphasize the need for comprehensive, robust standards, which this rule provides. Although hindsight is 20/20, we can't reverse what happened at Deepwater Horizon. We can work to not repeat history, and that's what this rule is trying to help. This rule has been more than 5 years in the making, with input from more than 50 different companies. Its goal is to find safe drilling practices, operational expectations for drilling equipment, performance criteria for blowout preventers, and increasing monitoring and verification. Now, I know that performance-based requirements allow industry experts who know these systems to best comply with the requirements in the most efficient ways. But in order for these to work, industry has to uphold their end of the bargain. We must also improve transparency through mechanisms like data sharing when things go wrong, so that regulators and industry can adapt in face of these new challenges. I'm sure we're going to hear more about that today. In summary, the administration has worked in good faith to ensure everyone's voice is heard. They extended the comment period, hosted workshops, and have had third parties. And I think that they've done their due diligence on being inclusive. So it is time to move forward on this process with the final rule. I recognize that no safety standard can be 100% fail-safe, but we can work to make incremental improvements to oil production procedures and safety. So I urge my colleagues to recognize that we still have serious gaps in oil spill response technology. The Coast Guard, NOAA, and other experts have testified to this fact again and again and again. So the United States is not prepared to handle a large spill like the one that we've seen in either of the big spills that we've seen in the country. And our oil spill response infrastructure has not been updated for decades. So as we move into deeper and deeper water, potentially deeper and deeper waters, the Coast Guard has repeatedly stated that we do not have the ability to clean up oil on ice. This is a huge concern. Not only do we have Arctic exploration occurring in U.S. waters, but also our neighboring countries are investing heavily in this. And the new habitats open to oil and gas and transportation, including the Arctic, these technologies are sorely needed. So that is why we need to strengthen NOAA's role in the Department of Interior's leasing and sales decisions. And certainly NOAA has should have essentially the same input as members of the public in discussing these issues. So It's clear today that we have many challenges in front of us, but I think that this rule should be finalized without further delay, and I look forward to hearing from the witnesses in their testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.